Om Namo Vasudeva Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cha Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhavati Naishti. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, today we are starting new chapter, chapter 21, Lord Krishna's explanation of the Vedic path. Text number 1 onwards. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha ya etan mat patho hitva bhakti gyan kriyatmakan shudran kama prana jushanta sansaranti te. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who give up these methods for achieving me, which consist of devotional service, analytical philosophy, and regulated execution of prescribed duties, and instead being moved by the material senses, cultivate insignificant sense gratification, certainly undergo the continual cycle of material existence. So, those who give up means the option is always there for us to take up devotional service, how much to take up, how much still to continue with, and as Krishna says, insignificant sense gratification. Shudran kama shala. As clearly explained by Lord Krishna in the previous chapters, philosophical analysis and also the performance of prescribed duties are ultimately meant for achieving Krishna consciousness, so pure love for God. Devotional service based on hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord directly engages the conditioned soul in the Lord's loving service, and thus is the most efficient means of achieving the Lord. All three processes, however, share a common goal, Krishna consciousness. Now the Lord describes those who, being completely absorbed in material sense gratification, do not adopt any authorized means to achieve the Lord's mercy. Currently, hundreds of millions of unfortunate human beings fit squarely into this category, and as described here, perpetually suffer the bondage of material existence. So those who don't follow, then what happens to them? Sve adhikari ya nishtha saguna parikirtita viparyayastu dosha syad ubhyoresha nishchaya. Steadiness in one's own position is declared to be actual piety, whereas deviation from one's position is considered impiety. In this way, the two are definitely ascertained. Previously, Lord Krishna explained that the path of spiritual progress begins with working without fruitive desires, advances to the stage of realized spiritual knowledge, and culminates in direct engagement in the devotion service of the Lord. Here the Lord emphasizes that a conditioned soul should not artificially disrupt the natural evolution of his Krishna consciousness by deviating from those duties prescribed by the Lord himself. So, sve adhikari yanishte. So whatever, see again, here it said one should just cultivate Krishna consciousness or grow in this moment, in this path gradually. In the lower stages of human life, one is entangled in false identification with the gross material body and desires to execute material fruitive activities based on society, friendship, and love. When such materialistic activities are offered in sacrifice to the Supreme Lord, one becomes situated in Karma Yoga. By regulated sacrifice, one gradually gives up the gross bodily concept of life and advances to the stage of realization of spiritual knowledge, whereby one understands oneself to be an eternal spirit soul, completely different from material body and mind. So gradually gives up the gross bodily concept of life. So slowly, it takes time. Feeling relief from the pangs of materialism, one becomes very attached to one's spiritual knowledge, and thus one is situated in the stage of Jnana Yoga. As a candidate further advances on the spiritual path, he understands himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. He then sees that his conditional life, as well as his spiritual knowledge, was obtained from the personality of Godhead, who awards the results of all types of activities, both pious and sinful. By directly engaging in the loving service of the Supreme Lord and understanding oneself to be the Lord's eternal servant, one's attachment evolves into pure love of Godhead. Thus one first gives up the lower stage of attachment to the material body, and then subsequently gives up attachment to cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This relieves one of material life. Finally, one recognizes the Lord himself as a resting place of one's eternal love and fully surrenders to God in full Krishna consciousness. So, point is, it takes time. Lord Krishna explains in this verse that one who is still attached to the material body and mind cannot artificially give up the prescribed duties of karma yoga. In the same way, one who is a spiritual neophyte, just beginning to realize the illusion of material life, should not artificially try to think of the Lord's intimate pastimes 24 hours a day, imitating the stage of prema bhakti. Rather, he should cultivate analytic knowledge of the material world, by which one gives up attachment to the material body and mind. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we find many analytic descriptions of the material world, and they can free the conditioned soul from false identification with matter. One who has achieved the perfect stage of love of Godhead, however, being freed from all gross and subtle attachments to the material world, may give up the lower stages of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga and engage directly in the Lord's loving service. So, again, we have to see where do we stand, what is our situation, and make progress accordingly. But slowly, we have to make progress and cannot imitate anybody else either. In chapter 19, verse 45, Lord Krishna says, Guna dosha drishtira dosha gunastubhya varjita. One should not see material good and evil within the devotee of the Lord. Indeed, one becomes pious by giving up such mundane conceptions. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that occasionally a neophyte devotee may be polluted by an association with those enthusiastically executing fruitive activities and mental speculation. Such a devotee's religious activities may be affected by mundane tendencies. Similarly, an ordinary person who observes the exalted status of a pure devotee sometimes externally imitates the devotee's activities, considering himself to be on the same exalted platform of pure devotional service. These imperfect practitioners of Bhakti Yoga are not exempt from criticism, since their fruitive activities, mental speculation, and false prestige are material intrusions in the pure loving service of the Lord. A pure devotee engaged exclusively in the Lord's service should not be criticized, but a devotee whose devotion service is mixed with material qualities may be corrected so that he can rise to the platform of pure devotion service. But at the same time, we have to understand the activities of a pure devotee, not to be imitated, not to be criticized, but cannot be understood either. Vaishnavera Kriya Mudra Vigyena Bhujaya. They're so difficult to understand. There's so many great devotees. And some of them are mentioned here in Bhagavatam. Many of them are mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But one cannot understand their mood. Very difficult. So we have to, that's why we have to follow the scriptures and carry on with our devotional service. without judging others, without trying to imitate others. But at the same time, we can get motivation, inspiration from pure devotees, from their lives, and try to make progress. Innocent persons should not be misled by the mixed devotion service of those not engaged exclusively in the Bhakti Yoga system. But those unable to fully engage in Krishna consciousness should nevertheless not give up their regular prescribed duties, declaring them to be illusion. That's not illusion. Not to give up regular prescribed duties. Prescribed duties means for grihasthis. We all are grihasthis. So whatever duties are there, we have to take care of them. We cannot say this is Maya and that is Maya. For example, one unable to fully engage in pure Krishna consciousness should not give up his family, considering it an illusion. For by doing so, he will fall into illicit sex life. Material piety and analytic knowledge of the material world must therefore be cultivated until one comes to the stage of directly practicing Krishna consciousness. And whenever we are ready, we are so spiritually advanced that we want to leave and we want to be engaged fully in Krishna service. Krishna will make the arrangements. He'll make the perfect arrangements. And whatever arrangement he has made, obviously they're all perfect for our situation, for our level, for our condition, mental condition, consciousness. He has made perfect arrangements. Shuddhi ashuddhi vidhiyeti samane shvapi vastushu dravyasya vichikitsartham guna dosho shubhashubho dharmartham vyavaharartham yatrartham iti chanaka. O sinless Uddhava, in order to understand what is proper in life, one must evaluate a given object within its particular category. Thus, in analyzing religious principles, one must consider purity and impurity. Similarly, in one's ordinary dealings, one must distinguish between good and bad, and to ensure one's physical survival, one must recognize that which is auspicious and inauspicious. In religious activities, ordinary dealings, and personal survival, one cannot avoid value judgments. Morality and religion are perennial necessities in civilized society. Therefore, distinctions between purity and impurity, piety and impiety, morality and immorality must somehow be ascertained. Similarly, in our ordinary worldly activities, we distinguish between palatable and tasteless food, good and bad business, high class and low class residences, good and bad friends, and so forth. And to ensure our physical health and survival, we must constantly distinguish what is safe and unsafe, healthy and unhealthy, profitable and unprofitable. Even a learned person must constantly distinguish between good and bad within the material world. But at the same time, he must understand the transcendental position of Krishna consciousness. Despite one's careful calculation of that which is materially healthy and unhealthy, the physical body will collapse and die. Despite careful scrutiny of the socially favorable and unfavorable, one's entire social milieu will vanish with the passage of time. In the same way, great religions arise and disappear in the course of history. Thus, mere religiosity, social and financial expertise, or physical fitness cannot award the actual perfection of life. Because these are all material. They're all material. And we get so entangled in this material lives. This is good, this is bad, this is favorable, that we forget what's the real goal of life. There is a transcendental good beyond the relative good of the material world. Any sane person accepts a practical and immediate necessity of material discrimination. Yet one must come ultimately to the transcendental stage of Krishna consciousness, where life is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. Lord Krishna, in his elaborate teachings to Sri Uddhava, is gradually clarifying the transcendental position of Krishna consciousness beyond the endless variety of material good and evil. And material good and evil, it also is relative. It varies from person to person. There's nothing absolute in it. And we get so bogged down by this and that we forget the real goal of life. Darshito ayam maya charo dharmam udvahatam thuram. I have revealed this way of life for those bearing the burden of mundane religious principles. Ordinary religious principles prescribing innumerable rules, regulations, and prohibitions are undoubtedly a great burden for those bereft of Krishna consciousness. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, Bhurini Bhuri Karmani Shruttavyani Vibhakasha. There are countless religious scriptures in the world prescribing countless religious duties. The authorized scriptures are those spoken by the Lord himself or his representatives, as stated in this verse. In the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarva dharman parite mam ekam sharanam vraja. One should give up the troublesome burden of mundane piety and directly take to the loving service of the Lord, in which everything is simplified. That Krishna also states in the Bhagavad Gita, Susukham kartam avyayam. The bhakti yoga process, which depends completely upon the mercy of the Lord, is very joyful and easily performed. Similarly, Lochan Das Thakur has said, Parama karuna pahu duijana nitai gaura chandra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Krishna himself, appeared 500 years ago to distribute the sublime method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. In this way, rather than bearing the burden of artificial austerity, one can directly take to the Lord's service, cleansing one's heart and immediately experiencing transcendental bliss. Those who have taken to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement follow 4 basic principles: no illicit sex, no meat eating, no fish or eggs, no intoxication, and no gambling. They rise early in the morning, chant Hare Krishna, and spend the day happily engaged in the Lord's service. Those who follow the ritualistic Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, however, are burdened with innumerable regulations, rituals, and ceremonies, which must be personally performed by the worshippers or performed on their behalf by qualified Brahmins. At any moment, there is a danger of discrepancy, resulting in the total loss of the accumulated piety. So this is what happens in Karma Kanda. Too many rituals, too many pujas, too many ceremonies. They have to be performed. Like every Monday they have to worship Lord Shiva, Tuesday, Hanumanji's day, so on and so forth. And that too with great seriousness or properly they have to do that. In chanting, of course, we have to chant properly, attentively, with love and devotion, but even if we are not chanting properly, still it will have favorable effect. Not that much effect that we are expecting, but still, effect, good effects will always be there. Bhakti, that's the beauty of bhakti. But puja, if something goes wrong in the puja or karma kanda section, then there could be different results than we expect. The practitioners of mystic yoga undergo grueling penances, subjecting themselves to severe heat and cold, near starvation, and so on. All such materialistic persons have personal desires to fulfill, whereas the devotees of the Lord, who desire the Lord's pleasure, simply depend upon the Lord's mercy and go back home, back to God. In the previous verse, the Lord mentioned that in the material world, there are endless distinctions and value judgments to be made in the course of one's life. A devotee, however, sees Krishna within everything and everything within Krishna, remaining humble, simple and blissful in the Lord's service. He does not perform elaborate religious ceremonies, nor does he become antisocial or immoral. So he doesn't become antisocial either, because he knows these are the people I have to preach to. The devotee simply chants the holy name of Krishna and easily achieves the highest perfection of life. Ordinary persons endeavor for body maintenance, but a devotee is automatically maintained by the Lord's mercy. A devotee's ordinary dealings and religious activities are also all dedicated to the personality of God. Thus, there is nothing but Krishna in a devotee's life. Krishna gives all protection and maintenance, and the devotee gives everything to Krishna. This natural, liberated situation is called Krishna consciousness. It's the ultimate absolute good, as explained by the Lord throughout this canto. So this is the beauty of this 11th canto, although it's coming towards the end of Bhagavatam, but Krishna has spoken throughout this 11th canto about pure devotional service. Bhumi ambavagna anilakasha utanam panchadhatava abrahmasthavar sharira atmasamyata. Earth, water, fire, air, and ether are the 5 basic elements that constitute the bodies of all conditioned souls, from Lord Brahma himself down to the non-moving creatures. These elements all emanate from the one personality of Godhead. The all material bodies are composed of different proportions of the same 5 gross elements, which emanate from the one personality of Godhead and cover the living entities who are all in the Jiva category. So everybody's body made of earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are the gross body. And subtle body made of mind, intelligence, false ego. Everything comes from Krishna. The concepts of good and bad depend on the choice of the Supreme Lord and not on the inherent qualitative differences in the material objects. A Krishna conscious person ultimately sees all material phenomena as one. The devotee's good behavior, intelligent discrimination, and artistic sense within the material world are all based on the will of God. Material elements being emanations from the Supreme Lord are ultimately all non-different. However, advocates of mundane piety fear that if the material duality of good and bad is minimized, people will become immoral or anarchistic, means they will not follow any rules. But that's not true. Certainly, the impersonal and atheistic philosophy preached by modern scientists, in which material variety is reduced to mere mathematical descriptions of molecular and atomic particles, leads to immoral society. Although both material and Vedic knowledge, material science and Vedic knowledge uncover the illusion of material variety and reveal the ultimate oneness of all material energy, only the devotees of Lord Krishna are surrendered to the supreme absolute piety of God's will. Very technical language is used here. Basically, what it is said that everything comes from Krishna, and all the bodies, where the material scientists say everything boils down to molecules and atoms. Yes, it does. But ultimately, the source of all the atoms, molecules, and different elements, gross elements, or water, fire, air, ether, everything comes from Krishna. Everything is his energy. So, and nothing can exist without him. Everything is maintained by him also. So, devotees' viewpoint is everything should be used in the service of Krishna, because he is the original owner, controller of everything. And this is the real morality. Vedena nama rupani vishamani sameshvapi dhatu shuddha kalpyanta etesham swartha siddhaya. My dear Uddhav, although all material bodies are composed of same 5 elements and are thus equal, The Vedic literatures conceive of different names and forms in relation to such bodies so that the living entities may achieve their goal of life. So ultimately, there is a goal of life to be achieved, not just try to enjoy these elements. Basically, it's made of these elements only. Try to enjoy these elements in different ways. The words Namarupani Vishamani refer to the system of Varnashram Dharma, in which members of human society are designated according to 4 social and 4 occupational divisions. Those dedicated to intellectual or religious perfection are called Brahmins. Those dedicated to political perfection are called Kshatriyas. Those dedicated to financial perfection are called Vaishyas, and those dedicated to eating, sleeping, sex, and honest work are called Shudras. Such propensities arise from the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Because a pure soul is not materially intellectual, ambitious for power, enterprising, or servile. Rather, the pure soul is always absorbed in loving devotion to the Supreme Lord. If the various propensities of a conditioned soul are not engaged in the Varnashram system, they will certainly be misused, and thus that person will fall down from the standard of human life. The Vedic system is designed by the Lord so that conditioned soul may pursue their individual achievements and at the same time advance towards the ultimate goal of life, Krishna consciousness. So this is the whole purpose of the whole wonderful and very detailed creation. Very much variety is there. But the purpose is not to get stuck here, not to try to enjoy, just try to get out of here, become Krishna conscious. Just as a doctor deals with a crazy man by speaking to him sympathetically in terms of his false conception of life, one who understands the Vedic literature engages the living entities according to their illusory identification with the elements of matter. Although all material bodies are composed of the same material elements and are thus qualitatively identical, as described here with the words Sameshu, the Vedic social system Varnashram is created to engage all human beings in Krishna consciousness according to their various degrees of material identification. The purpose is to engage everybody in the service of the Lord. And depending upon their consciousness, level of consciousness, or hates this material identification, the engagements can be different. That's why Varnashram system is there. Deshkaladi bhavanam vastunamam sattama gunadosho vidhiyete niyamartham hi karmanam. O saintly Uddhav, in order to restrict materialistic activities, I have established that which is proper and improper among all material things, including time, space, and all physical objects. The word niyamartham, in order to restrict, is significant in this. A conditioned soul falsely identifies with its material senses and thus considers anything.
मैं अभी वो देख रही हूँ ना.
Krishna. A conditioned soul falsely identifies with its material senses and thus considers anything giving immediate satisfaction to the body to be good and anything inconvenient or disturbing to be bad. Well, yeah, this is everybody's thought processes. By higher intelligence, however, one recognizes long-term self-interest and danger. For example, medicine may be immediately bitter, but by calculating one's long-term interest, one accepts the bitter medicine to cure a disease that is not immediately troublesome, but ultimately fatal. Similarly, Vedic literature restricts the sinful propensities of human beings by establishing what is proper and what is improper among all the objects and activities of the material world. Because everyone must eat the Vedas prescribe foods in the mode of goodness and not those which are sinful, such as meat, fish, and eggs. Similarly, one is advised to live in a peaceful and pious community and not in association with sinful persons, nor in an unclean or turbulent environment. By designating and restricting the exploitations of the material world, Vedic knowledge gradually brings a conditioned soul to the platform of material goodness. At that stage, one becomes eligible to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead and enter the transcendental stage of life. It should be remembered that such mere eligibility does not constitute actual qualification. Without Krishna consciousness, mere mundane piety can never qualify a conditioned soul to go back to Godhead. So mere mundane piety, it is good, but it's not sufficient. It's not the qualification to go back to Godhead. Devotional service is the qualification. Within this material world, we are all infected by false pride, which must be diminished through submission to the Vedic injunctions. One who is completely engaged in the loving service of the Lord need not adopt these preliminary methods, for it directly contacts the personality of Godhead through the spontaneous process of surrender. In the previous verse, the Lord explained why Vedic literatures assign different values to the bodies of different living entities. And here the Lord explains the Vedic value system in regard to the material objects that interact with these bodies. See, all the different bodies, although made of earth, water, fire, air, ether, but there are three modes: mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. So, same earth, water, fire, air, ether, in different modes, it just acts differently. This point, people cannot understand. Those who don't have Vedic vision, they cannot understand. They think everybody is same. Everybody is one. Everybody is same in the sense, yes, made of same 5 basic elements. Or the soul is same. Soul is Satchidanand. But everybody is different at the same time because of the 3 modes of nature. How much we are under which mode, that determines the way we are going to act, where we are going to think. That determines our consciousness level. So everybody is same and different at the same time. Krishna Saro Deshanam Abrahmanyo Asuchir Bhavit Krishna Saro Api Sovira Ki Kata Sanskriterinam. Among places, those bereft of the spotted antelope, those devoid of devotion to the Brahmans, those possessing spotted antelopes, but bereft of respectable man, provinces like Kikat and places where cleanliness and purificatory rites are neglected, where meat eaters are prominent or where the earth is barren, are all considered to be contaminated lands. The word Krishna Sar refers to the spotted antelope, whose hide is used by brahmacharis while residing in the ashram of their spiritual master. Brahmacharis never hunt in the forest, but rather accept skins from those animals already deceased. The skin of the black or spotted antelope is also used as garment by those receiving instructions in the execution of Vedic sacrifices. Therefore, since sacrifice cannot be properly performed in areas bereft of such creatures, these places are impure. Now, the question is, why antelope? Why this antelope or what you call tiger? Why that skin? Because if either somebody is wearing the cloth, garment of that skin. Or sometimes we see some sages sitting on an asan, and then covered with that skin of the dead tiger, and then they sit on that asan. Not that this is just something to be very proud of. There's a practical reason. And the practical reason is no insect, or even in fact snakes also, they won't come near that skin. That's how Krishna has designed it. So that these brahmacharis or the sages can carry on with their meditation or with their spiritual activities without any fear. So this is how powerful these skins are. Furthermore, although the inhabitants of a particular place may be expert in performing fruitive activities and ritualistic sacrifices, if they are inimical to the devotional service of the Lord, such a place is also polluted. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati explains that previously the provinces of Bihar and Bengal were bereft of devotional service to the Lord and were considered impure. Then great Vaishnavas such as Jayadev appeared in these territories, converting them into holy places. So similarly, places outside India, they were really impure, not suitable for devotional service. But Srila Prabhupada came and then he established ISKCON and devotees, and he sent devotees all over the world chanting the holy names and distributing books, lecturing and established temples. Now all over the world, they're beautiful, wonderful places, and very, very suitable for devotional service. The word asovira indicates those places without suviras, respectable, saintly persons. Ordinarily, a person who obeys the state laws is considered a respectable citizen. In the same way, one who strictly obeys the law of God is considered to be cultured or decent man, suvira. The place where such intelligent persons reside is called a sovira. Kikat refers to the modern state of Bihar, which traditionally has been known as a territory of uncivilized men. Even in such provinces, however, any place where saintly persons gather is considered to be holy. Of course, in Bihar province, there's so many wonderful places, but according to scriptures, because of uncivilized men were there earlier, so not very conducive place. On the other hand, a province of generally respectable persons is immediately polluted by the presence of sinful men. Sanskrita indicates lack of external cleanliness as well as the absence of purificatory ceremonies for internal cleanliness. Srila Madhvacharya quotes from the Skanda Purana as follows: religious persons should reside within an 8-mile radius of rivers, oceans, mountains, hermitages, forests, spiritual cities, or places where the Shaligram Shala is found. All other places should be considered kikat or contaminated. But even if in such contaminated places black and spotted antelopes are found, one may reside there as long as sinful persons are not also present. So many rules and regulations are there. Karmanyo gunvan kalo dravyata swata eva va yato nivartate karma sadosho karmakaha smritaha. A specific time is considered pure when it is appropriate, either by its own nature or through achievement of suitable paraphernalia for the performance of one's prescribed duty. That time which impedes the performance of one's duty is considered impure. So firstly, Krishna talked about the places, and now he talks about time. Certain times, such as Brahm Muhurata, the last few hours before sunrise, are always auspicious for spiritual advancement. Other times, not auspicious in themselves. become so by achievement of material prosperity that facilitates one's mission in life. Political, social, or economic disturbances that obstruct the execution of one's religious duties are considered inauspicious times. Similarly, women is considered contaminated just after childbirth or during her menstrual period. She cannot perform ordinary religious activities at such times, which are therefore inauspicious and impure. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that the most auspicious of all times is a moment one achieves the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If one neglects the loving service of the Lord, being carried away by sense gratification, he is certainly living in the most inauspicious times. Therefore, that moment in which one achieves the association with the Supreme Lord, the Lord's pure devotees, are most auspicious times, whereas the moment of losing such association is most inauspicious. So that if we are performing devotional service, coming close to the Lord, or coming close to Lord's devotees, or meet Lord's devotees, that is the most auspicious. Forget about any other time restrictions. Dravyasya shuddhi ashuddhi cha dravena vachanena cha sanskarenat kalena bhatvalpa tayatva. An object's purity or impurity is established by application of another object, by words, by rituals, by the effects of time, or according to relative magnitude. So there are different ways of purifying things. Cloth is purified by application of clean water and contaminated by application of urine. The words of a saintly Brahman are pure, but the sound vibration of materialistic person is contaminated by lust and envy. A saintly devotee explains actual purity to others, whereas a non-devotee makes false propaganda that leads innocent people to commit polluted, sinful activities. Talking about cloth. Now, even in cloth, there are different kinds of cloth. Silk is considered to be the most pure. Although when it comes in contact with urine or stool, it also becomes impure. But other than that, it's very pure. You know, one can wear it while doing deity worship, even if one has slept in it. Then second is wool. Woolen clothes are considered, very pure, but not as pure as silk. Then comes cotton. Cotton, and then is all synthetics. Synthetics are very impure material. Coming from Karmakanda perspective. Even Vaishnavas, many Vaishnavas strictly follow these rules. Especially from Bengal and Odisha, or South India also. So they have their own different rules that they follow about purity of clothes, what they wear, at what time, for what purpose, and if they've touched anything while wearing that cloth. There's so many rules actually in deity worship. There are so many rules up there, which when engaged in deity worship, one should follow, because it's a very, very pure activity. We are standing right next to the Lord and trying to serve Him. But besides all that, the most important thing is mentally one has to be pure. That is more important. But all of the rules, wonderful rules are there, and one should try to follow as much as possible. Pure rituals are those meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while materialistic ceremonies are those that lead their followers into materialistic and demoniac activities. The word samskarena also indicates that the purity or impurity of a particular object is ascertained according to the regulations of ritualistic performances. For example, a flower to be offered to the deity must be purified with water. It should be clean. Flowers of food cannot be offered to the deity, however, if they have been contaminated by being smelled or tasted before the offering. The word kalena indicates that certain substances are purified by time and others contaminated by time. Rainwater, for example, is considered pure after 10 days' time and after 3 days in cases of emergency. On the other hand, certain foods decay in time and thus become impure. Mahatva indicates that great bodies of water do not become contaminated, and alpatya means that a small amount of water can easily become polluted or stagnant. In the same way, a great soul is not polluted by occasional contact with materialistic persons, whereas one whose devotion to God is very small is easily carried away and put into doubt by bad association. In terms of combination with other substances and in terms of speech, ritual, time, and magnitude, the purity and impurity of all objects can be ascertained. So again, different rules are there, and one should follow, at least for deity worship or at home also. There are different rules are there. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, being so merciful, so lenient, so magnificent, is that Nam Namakari Bahuda Nitsarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Swarane Nakala. There is no niyam, no time, no place of niyam of any kind for chanting the holy names of the Lord. So one can chant anytime, anywhere, in any place. Of course, we don't chant on our beads in a toilet. The toilet is not considered very pure. We don't take our beads in the toilet, but we can chant in a toilet with our mouth. There's no restriction for that. So there was a little boy, Gopal, when Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri, and there was a devotee who was very, very attached to chanting of the holy names. So then he heard that Krishna is non-different from Krishna's name. So it was very difficult for him because he would chant every day, every minute of the day. Whenever he's up, he would be chanting. So when he went to pass his stool, so he was like, if I chant, Krishna is non-different from his name. So Krishna is here. How can I bring Krishna here when I'm passing stool? So he was trying to hold his tongue while chanting, but the tongue was so accustomed to chanting, it was difficult. So this boy, Gopal, somehow noticed this person's dilemma. So Gopal came to him, not at the time when he was passing stool, but later on, and said, oh, you never heard the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said there is no restriction of time and place for chanting, so you can chant anytime. What if when you're passing stool, you die? And if you're not chanting, then what will happen to you? So then that person understood, yes, that is right. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard this Gopal speaking about holy names so nicely and about the chanting at any time you can chant, Mahaprabhu was very happy with him and called him, from now on, you will be called Gopal Guru. You are a guru. You'll be called Gopal Guru. So this is about chanting of the holy names. Of course, there are so many rules and regulations for purity and impurity, especially when we go for deity worship. We should follow, and to whatever extent, because there's so so many. It's impossible to follow everything, especially for us. There are so many devotees, especially in South India and Bengal, they follow very, very precisely. And actually, I've been chastised by some. You guys don't follow anything. Like, yes, I'm fallen, but I chant. So I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.